With the release of Jurassic World Rebirth coming out next week, we thought it would be a fun idea to go over the original Jurassic Park and approach it from a cybersecurity perspective and see what they did right and what they did so wrong.
You didn't say the magic word.
Okay, so yesterday, both of us watched Jurassic Park. We took notes about everything we saw that went wrong. And today we're coming back together and we're going to talk about, what happens in the movie. And one of the first things right off the bat that I noticed is when they're going in to the cage with the raptor in the very beginning, and they have the guy standing on top of the cage, manually pulling the cage open. I mean, really, that's not like a cybersecurity thing. That's just like a complete, mechanical oversight. And, as we go on in the movie, John Hammond shows up. He talks to Dr. Grant. He invites him to the island. They're going to the island on the helicopter, which, to me, I feel like that was a good security measure that they decided to put the dinosaurs on an island. It added layers of security. So that could go into the protect function of the NIST CSF.
Yeah, for that, it wasn't a bad idea. But also in the books, we see that one of the faulty systems they actually had in their computer system is that they kept a minimum track of all the dinosaurs of what they expected there to be, because they all should be female. They all shouldn't have the ability to reproduce. And so if it kept track of those numbers, it would never actually find the ones that they were reproducing, especially because we know that the raptors were. And from that, we know that there were way more dinosaurs than was originally counted in the first, meaning that there were several raptors already roaming around freely on that island by the time Dr. Allen got there.
Which, if you've ever written a test function in code, one of the first things you do is you write all of your boundary tests,
Yes.
You need to have a boundary of it should be statistically impossible for the dinosaurs to breed, but that doesn't stop you from keeping track of, we have to know if they do.
Exactly.
Even though it should be impossible, if anybody's ever written code, you know that the impossible happens all of the time. And that's especially true with biological entities.
Yes.
So anyways, they get to the island. John Hammond, he's showing them around. Everything's fantastic. They go on the tour. And then later on, as they're on the tour, on the tracks, which that in itself, the electrical vehicles on the tracks was a point of failure, because we see later on in the movie that the vehicles shut down. When the electric grid shuts down in the middle of a hurricane, which, they're in the islands, there's going to be hurricanes all of the time. They didn't account for the fact that maybe the tracks would shut down at some point.
Yeah.
Which was also due to Nedry's, finagling and stuff. But
yeah. And so having everything on a single system really caused a lot of problems, because if you can't move the vehicles, all the gates are open, the electric fences don't work. It's you don't have any protection.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it really shows a failure in the point of redundancy that we see in the NIST CSF. You always have redundancy. You also always want an incident response plan, which later on in the movie, let me backtrack though. Before we get into the incident response plan, we have to be introduced to, I guess, the main antagonist of the movie outside of the dinosaurs, which was Nedry.
Yes.
So Nedry, he is the software engineer on site. He's the debugger. He's also the cybersecurity specialist in a way. There's also Mr. Arnold.
And the database manager.
Yeah. And so he says something about he manages 8 connection machines and debugs 2 million lines of code. And he talks about, that's not cheap. And John Hammond's like, I'm not going to get involved in another financial dispute. And we see, as we saw earlier in the film, where Nedry's getting paid off, because that happens. That happens to real companies in the world, where they'll have a single point of failure. Somebody doesn't have clearly defined roles. They're taking on all of these responsibilities, and then all of a sudden, they backstab the company, and the company loses billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And so that was definitely a point of failure where they should have had multiple people. Nedry should not have been able to pull off what he did without having to collaborate with someone else, which is also something the NIST CSF talks about.
Yeah, and the importance that Nedry put in an implementation where he had, what was it, White Rabbit?
The White Rabbit object,
Yeah, where he was the only one who could gain access and be able to control everything. Not everyone didn't have access. If they needed something, it have to go through Nedry, making Nedry the most valuable person at Jurassic Park.
As we go on through the movie, Nedry pulls off his big heist. He takes all of the embryos. He shuts down all of the security systems except for the raptor fences, of course. He's making his big getaway, and Dr. Grant and the kids are stranded right in front of the T-Rex paddock because there's nowhere to go. There's no emergency exits. There's no redundancy like we talked about, and it's just a disaster. After the T-Rex gets out, Muldoon goes in the gas jeep with Dr. Grant's girlfriend, Dr. Sattler. That's who
good job.
Dr. Sattler, yes. They go, they find Dr. Malcolm. They find what's left of the lawyer who had sadly perished after abandoning the children. But they go, they have their encounter with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then they come back, and Mr. Arnold says that he cannot get into the system. Nedry has completely locked out the entire company, and the only way that they can recover the system is doing something that apparently they've never done before, which is shut down the entire grid manually and then turn it back on. Now, to me, that clearly violates everything in the CSF, which is if you have an incident response plan, you should have tested that plan many, many times to ensure that it works. And Mr. Arnold says, we've never done this before. I'm not going to do it. And it's like, you really didn't think that this would be a problem? Anyways.
But, so if we think about it, had they had a plan, what would that have looked like?
Well, had they had an incident response plan, had they tested it, had they had procedures in place to test it, they would have found that, the system, we can reboot it, but it trips the breakers down in the supply shed where they go down into those tunnels and stuff.
Yeah.
We need to make sure if we ever do this in the future, we need to have somebody there that when we turn the park back on, they can immediately flip the breakers back on. Had they had somebody there ready to go, the Raptors never would have gotten out.
I think backup generators would have been a good idea.
Yes, the backup power. It
Yeah.
should have been way more sophisticated and way more well-maintained than it was.
Yeah. I feel like there should have been multiple emergency exits or emergency exit plans if people needed to get out of an enclosure, so to speak, because it's like, how are they going? It happens how many times in the movies? There's 6 movies, and each time they get trapped. And
They get trapped.
And so you're not thinking hey, this is foolproof for them, but what about me?
Right.
You're not thinking about the person you're actually putting in those scenarios.
There was a clear lack of foresight in a lot of what happened in Jurassic Park. In modern security systems on modern security sites, which I don't think this is classified information. I'm not privy to classified information, but we know that Disney has underground tunnels for their employees to move around the park. So it has precedence in other amusement parks. I think there's tunnels under Washington, D.C. Don't quote me on that. But it's a well-known way of increasing mobility of park employees. To wrap up, the rest of Jurassic Park just unfolds with the raptors chasing the kids around, in the kitchen, and they eventually make it to the main... actually, I don't know if it is a main security outpost, where Lex goes in with the computer and she finds a Unix system. and she starts, moving around on that 3D environment
Oh, yeah.
when they're trying to lock the doors.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny. We actually researched this. That was a real system. That wasn't just something they made up to make code look cool in the movie. The Unix 3D graphical interface was a real interface that was in development and was considered cutting edge at the time of the production of the film.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, it was a prototype and it never made it to wide use in public, but it was a real thing. And they thought it looked cool for the movie because of its 3D interface.
It's just like, could you even imagine, like, being a child and, like, trying to navigate that and, like, how to, like, lock and unlock doors? and so, like, there was, like, a red button being, like, locked down.
Yeah, there should have been, which we go back to redundancies, and they should have had a cybersecurity officer on board rather than making Nedry the one guy with many hats. They should have had locking. Remember in the movie when they say locking mechanisms on the vehicle doors?
Yes.
It seems childish now because you'd think clearly they would have some way to keep the passengers in the vehicles as they're going by these dinosaurs. And another thing is the electrical locks, when Lex is trying to lock them, they had no way to manually lock them. It was all completely electrical, which goes back to the redundancies.
And so it's like you wonder, like, so everything was like so spread out across the park, and then Sattler had to go across and like turn the system back on. And the electrical fences like shocked the kid, remember?
Yes.
And so like you wonder, like, why was everything like not, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like in like phases where it's like, okay, this is gonna happen, then this. Like everything just like happened in like one swift motion because it was like a single point of failure and it started back up, it was the same. And so I don't know, it's just like, okay, like where was like the monitoring?
Yes, they should have been monitoring. They should have been keeping log of things that could have gone wrong. It goes back to their incident response plan. They clearly had no incident response plan. They had no plans at all if the dinosaurs got out. Except, of course, for the lysine contingency. But what are you going to do, wait 6 weeks for the dinosaurs to go into a coma? That's not really a good way of addressing the immediate threat of the dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, after that, Lex does, by sheer luck, Lex knows the Unix system, and she's able to lock the dinosaurs out, which they get in anyways. And we go into the big finale with the T-Rex fighting the raptors, and everybody gets home safe, and it's all happy. But, all of this could have been avoided had they just practiced some simple cybersecurity protocols. Mm-hmm. Cybersecurity is very important in the modern world, and Jurassic Park is a perfect example of why we should implement it and why paying your cybersecurity analysts proper money and having them manage things in the long run is going to be a lot cheaper to you than trying to cut ends and hire a single person to take on everything. It will catastrophically backfire.
Oh, 100%. Like, could you even imagine, like, being, who was it, Dr. Arnold?
Yeah.
And, like, trying to, like, figure it out, being like, oh, it's okay. And then, like, realizing, like, there's no protection. Like, you're out on your own. And if you want to restart the system, like, there has to be, like, a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Sattler almost didn't make it out alive.
Yeah.
And she was the second person. She was with Muldoon, her armed guard. And Muldoon was armed and he lost his life.
Yeah.
So these things really happen. Not to the point with Jurassic Park with dinosaurs getting out, but metaphorically, companies have dinosaurs that they're trying to keep contained and keep controlled. And if they don't follow proper protocols, if they don't have a way to detect, if they don't have a way to respond, if they don't have a way to recover their system, they could go out of business. They could enter lawsuits. It's a big deal.
Yeah. And especially because you want, like me, if I were who's the like owner or founder?
Oh yeah, Hammond.
Yeah, Hammond. Like Hammond not knowing anything about security, being like, no, we thought of everything. Like reassuring Dr. Allen, be like, no, this is 100% safe. We got it covered. Like you're not doing the proper testing of anything. You're just like looking at it face value, be like, yeah, everything's good. We did our research. We got it. Instead of like having like a more proactive role in like how the system was developed and being like, okay, well, is this testing happening? Are we making sure the correct amount of animals? Is the feeding right? Like,
Yeah.
You're getting everything wrong because you're like so naive to what it should be, and you're letting someone else handle it when you're like, well, who do you have to blame? Sorry.
Yeah. It reminds me of that conversation that Hammond and Dr. Sattler have. Hammond's, sitting with the ice cream. He's eating the ice cream, and she comes up, and he's like, next time, it'll be totally different. Which, in real life, that's what companies should do. They should recognize their faults. And, Hammond admits that hiring Nedry was a mistake, having a single point of control like that. And Dr. Sattler, says that was the illusion, was that he had control. Unlike a normal company, Jurassic Park was, the movie's very philosophical about you're messing with nature in ways that man shouldn't. And, life finds a way. And the real message of the movie wasn't about, if they had better security protocols, everything would have been fine. And that's not what we're saying. Kind of. I'm sure if they had some security measures, something would have gone wrong anyways, but it always does. But in Jurassic Park, the message was, they shouldn't have been messing with these dinosaurs anyways. They shouldn't have brought them back into the modern world. But they could have done a lot better.
Yeah, but even in Jurassic World, right, when they think that they've addressed everything, they didn't.
Yes, the, what's it called? The Indorex?
Yeah,
It gets out.
Indominus.
Yes, the Indominus Rex. It baits them, traps them.
Yes.
And unleashes itself upon the island. Which I think we should, for our next episode, we should go over Jurassic World's security measures. And
We can do a follow-up when Rebirth comes out.
yes, we can do a follow-up when Jurassic World Rebirth comes out. It'll be in theaters July 2nd. So we hope you guys enjoyed. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I feel like we perfectly summarized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is really cool, and it can help you in your life. And dinosaurs are really cool, too. Just be careful with them.
Don't get eaten.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm Garrett Helms, and this is Savanna, and we're the Tech Talk people. We'll see you guys next time.
Yes, thank you.